This season, Instacart has your back to school. As in, they've got your back to school lunch favorites like snack packs and fresh fruit. And they've got your back to school supplies like backpacks, binders, and pencils. And they've got your back when your kid casually tells you they have a huge school project due tomorrow. Let's face it, we were all that kid. So first, call your parents to say I'm sorry, and then download the Instacart app to get delivery in as fast as 30 minutes all school year long. Get a $0 delivery fee with your first 3 orders while supplies last. Minimum $10 an order. Additional terms apply.
7 things you don't really need to know, but probably should. I'm Kira Revan, and this is the Sunday 7.
On today's episode of the award-winning Smart 7, it's Jamie East here in for Kira Revans. In today's episode, we get the latest on the chaotic story of Boeing's Starliner, find out what trouble Elon Musk has got himself into this week, discover why your kitchen counter could be killing people, and work out whether the early bird or the night owl is smarter. Oh, and please do like and follow if you're enjoying the episode, and remember you can get the 7 biggest stories 7 days a week at 7 a.m. with the Smart 7. And before we start, it was on this day in 1999 that the last total eclipse, Jaffa Cake style, of the millennium occurred. It was probably the most watched eclipse of all time, with about 350 million people seeing it as it crossed England, Europe, India and Iran.
7.
Imagine your job asks you to go on a work trip, probably for around 7 days or so. You wouldn't mind too much, right? Bit of a break from the normal routine and all that. But what if that 7 days turned into 7 months, and instead of getting sent to Slough or maybe Scotland, you got fired up into space and, well, you couldn't get back? That's what happened to Butch Wilmore and Suni Williams, who set off to space on the brand new Boeing Starliner back in June. Boeing hasn't exactly been knocking it out of the park recently, and unfortunately things haven't gone any better with their Starliner program, which was intended to replace the space shuttle as a key piece of NASA's inventory. The crewed mission was officially a test flight, but it ran into trouble when 5 of the thrusters failed as the ship attempted to dock with the International Space Station. In the end, the astronauts managed to manually dock, but ever since then NASA and Boeing have been trying to fix the issue. The bad news is, there doesn't seem to be an easy answer, and until it's 100% safe, the 2 astronauts are staying in space. This week saw a NASA conference call where they laid out the issues. Kenneth Bowersox is a former astronaut and NASA's Associate Administrator for Space Operations.
We know that at some point we need to bring Butch and Sonny home. While they're up there, we have extra crews, we have extra hands. They can do a lot more work, but they're also using up more consumables, more supplies. So we have to maintain that balance, and at some point we need to bring those folks home and get back to a normal crew size on the ISS.
The best plan at the moment is that a SpaceX Dragon vehicle is due to visit the space station with 4 crew in September, and the proposal is that it should instead only carry 2, and when their mission's complete in February, Butch and Suni could return in the spare seats. It'd be extremely embarrassing for Boeing to see the Starliner crew hitch a ride on a SpaceX vehicle, but NASA's International Space Station Program Manager Dana Weigel says they planned ahead for just this possibility.
Butch and Sonny are fully trained. They're capable and current with EVA, with robotics, with all the things we need them to do. They have both actually done expeditions on board station previously. They've also done EVAs for us. They've got suits that fit them, and so no issue or challenge with them performing the increment if we really had to do that.
Former ISS Commander Dr. Leroy Chiao says that Boeing and NASA will continue to try and solve the issue in the meantime.
I think the desire would be to bring them down on the Starliner. That would not disrupt the crew rotation. Primarily Crew 9 coming up is already being delayed. But, the issue is we can't bring them down until we really understand what happened on the way up and specifically the approach to the station. Why did those thrusters fail, and why wouldn't more fail on the way down? And so we really need to understand and get comfortable with what happened and what we can do about it before we put the astronauts back in the Starliner. So the crew is in no danger. They can stay on board the station, continue to contribute as long as needed. But at some point, you've got to, fish or cut bait. And so hopefully that'll happen sooner rather than later.
Here Here at the Smart 7, we've been telling you for a while now that 2024 would be the year that big tech meets big law. And boy, were we right about that. This week's seen Google lose a major case against the US government, which could see the search engine face major sanctions. It's also seen new pressure on social media platform X, which is entirely of Elon Musk's own making. But when it comes to big tech, there's only one big brain we trust to give the lowdown, and that's the Smart 7's tech guru, Will Guyatt. Will, always good to speak to you. So did you have Elon and Keir Starmer getting into a Twitter war on your 2024 bingo card?
I've got some pretty crazy thoughts in my mind, Jacuzzi, but this definitely wasn't on the list, and nor was Musk sharing a fake news story from a far-right figure that suggested the UK was going to start sending rioters to the Falkland Islands, 7,896 miles away from home. Somebody soon told him that this post was bullshine, but not before around 2 million people had read it.
Musk and X could be in serious trouble in the UK though, right?
As is often the way in politics, the UK online safety bill isn't yet fully enacted, and that would have made it far easier in attempts to fine X up to 7% of its global revenue, and it would also make its executives criminally liable. You can be sure now that the government will be making very sure that the UK online safety bill is properly in place for the next time something like this happens, and possibly with stronger controls and penalties for when social networks don't remove misinformation or posts hyping riots, as well as when social media bosses go rogue.
Well, he's not just busy trying to start a UK civil war though, he's also started a war with advertisers? Does that seem sensible to you?
Imagine you stood up in front of advertisers and told them to, and I quote, go f*** yourselves at a US media event, and then you decide to try and take them to court for an apparent advertising boycott, which you claim has cost you billions of dollars. That is exactly what Elon Musk is currently doing. He's suing this group of huge companies, including Mars, Unilever, and CVS. They're the US equivalent of Boots the Chemist, if you aren't familiar. And they'd all been part of an advertising group set up as part of the World Advertising Federation. X claim they've done loads to clean up the platform, so are seeking unspecified damages and a court order to stop these continued efforts to withhold ad cash from the platform. Now, this counters independent suggestions who say that ads on X have been running alongside posts from Nazi sympathisers and a range of conspiracy theorists. Let's not also forget that Musk himself was sharing posts just last week suggesting the UK was on the brink of a civil war. In short, X is not really the type of place that reputable advertisers fancy going to advertise.
Presumably we're just too thick to see the Musk master plan though, right?
This is really the equivalent of me or you trolling somebody online, and so far just the Tesla-owning Musk enthusiasts have stepped forward with seemingly any kind of support for this crazy plan, while others suggest it's just Musk wasting the cash and energy of others in having to dispute a waste of time legal action. When you're the world's richest man, you can also be the world's biggest arse.
Okay, let's talk Google for a sec. They've had a really bad week thanks to Judge Meta, right?
This looks very likely to be the start of a really bad time for Google, and we were bang on with our prediction that 2024 was the year of big tech versus big law. This major ruling centers around the fact that Google has spent billions of dollars a year to ensure it's the default search engine on devices like the iPhone and Galaxy phones. As a result, they make even more money by being able to capture all of the data from users of these smartphones and other devices. The judge published a 286-page report, which basically says that Google is a monopoly that's stopping others from competing in the online advertising and search market. Google currently handles over 90% of global search inquiries, and that helps make its dominance in the advertising space. Google says it's going to appeal against the ruling and said it was a decision which recognises that Google offers the best search engine, but concludes that we shouldn't allow to be able to make it easily available.
How serious is it though? I mean, are we talking breaking up or closing down Google? God help us, are we going to have to start using Bing?
This is pretty serious actually. US regulators have suggested they may seek to break up Alphabet, that's Google's parent company, to stop the dominance. And the regulators are also waiting to report back on similar cases related to Apple and Meta, so things may start to look different in the world of technology. And just whisper it, but Bing isn't actually that bad these days.
Cheers, Will. Speak to you next week. Still to come on the Sunday 7, why your kitchen counter could be a killer, and the NHS has a new plan for diabetes. The world of kitchen worktops doesn't seem like it could be particularly hazardous to your health, right? Maybe you've cut your finger, maybe you bang your hip on a corner, but they're actually potentially life-threatening, particularly the new generation of artificial stone worktops. For years you had the choice of fancy marble or cheap and cheerful MDF, but there's a new breed that blends together crushed rocks with resin and pigments, and it turns out it's highly dangerous. I'm going to say I've got that in my kitchen. Oh, not necessarily to us as the end user, but those who work on the cutting and prep before it's fitted in your kitchen. Phew. The silica-heavy dust causes a fatal lung condition called silicosis, with the first death from the condition reported in the UK last year. At least 8 workers have contracted the condition in the UK, leading to calls for a ban on what's known as engineered stone. Australia's already moved to ban the product since last month, and Assistant Secretary of the Victorian Trades Council, Strake, explains why.
There's updates in the campaign to ban engineered stone. Quick reminder, this stuff kills people. 1 in 4 workers cutting it ends up with serious lung disease because it's got a super high concentration of silica in it. And if that shit gets in your lungs, it is bad. And if you cut this stuff, it's really hard not to get it in your lungs. So, the first thing to report is that Safe Work Australia, our national health and safety regulator, has released a review and they've said the only safe way to deal with engineered stone is to ban it. And the second thing is that unions have said if the government doesn't ban it, we will.
The only possible treatments are lung transplant, and the Lung Foundation of Australia has also been active in campaigning against the engineered stone product. Joshua Suwa has contracted the illness, and he explains what his life's been like since he was diagnosed.
My main symptoms for silicosis and scleroderma, main one with silicosis is the shortness of breath. My physical state is not the same because my lung capacity is a lot different to what it once was. So just your general day-to-day tasks that I've got to sort of do a lot more difficult because of the breathing difficulties. With the scleroderma, it's brought on a lot more other different sort of pains. A lot of the pains come in my feet, my hands, numbness, arthritis sort of feeling in my hands, so I'm constantly trying to massage my hands and just sort of resting my feet up. I'm unable to stand for longer periods of time now.
Diabetes is a significant health threat to the Western world, as increasing calorific diets combined with a lack of exercise have led to a boom in the numbers of people diagnosed with the potentially life-changing condition. Weight loss drugs such as Ozempic and Wegovy have offered some hope but have been highly oversubscribed by those seeking to lose weight for cosmetic reasons. Now the NHS is set to introduce a new non-drug based regime for patients based on research recently published in The Lancet. Professor John Valabji from NHS England explains that the trial could represent a major breakthrough.
This is quite an important milestone for us with regard to the programme, and actually we're the first internationally, first in the world to be able to demonstrate that the findings from the trial setting can be translated into the real world to provide similar benefit for our patients.
The research looked at almost 1,000 people over a full year, and 32% of them managed to put their type 2 diabetes into remission. The diet plan involves pretty much just liquids to reduce your calorie intake. Dr. Gary Deed is a diabetes expert for the Royal Australian College of General Practitioners.
It's basically reducing calories and using meal replacements to help support patients. If it worked in the UK, it can work here in Australia. We need policy change and funding from the government to allow us to provide these sort of programs.
The programme appears to work best for those who've been diagnosed in the last 6 years, and the typical weight loss is around 15 kilos. Melanie McGrice is a dietitian, and she's warning that it's still important to make sure you get all of the key nutrients you need, even with a reduced calorie regime.
Some people don't get enough of key nutrients, so some people might require more protein, other people might require more folate, things along those lines.
Still to come on the Sunday 7, it's Night Owls versus Early Birds, and we dig into the effects of climate change.
Right after this.
To make switching to the new Boost Mobile risk-free, we're offering a 30-day money-back guarantee.
So why wouldn't you switch from Verizon or T-Mobile?
Because you have nothing to lose. Boost Mobile is offering a 30-day money-back guarantee.
No, I asked why wouldn't you switch from Verizon or T-Mobile?
Oh.
Wouldn't.
Because you love wasting money as a way to punish yourself because your mother never showed you enough love as a child?
Whoa. Easy there.
Yeah.
Applies to online activations. Requires port in and auto pay. Customers activating in stores may be charged non-refundable activation fees.
Welcome back.
2024 is on track to be the hottest year on record according to the European Climate Monitoring Service Copernicus, who say that this July was the second hottest month ever. The actual hottest month ever was July 2023, and this July does at least break a 13-month run of successively higher temperatures. Southern Europe has struggled once again with heat waves, but data shows that Africa is heating up faster than the rest of the world. This has significant implications for the population, particularly for those who suffer from albinism. Diane Asogba is a dermatologist in the city of Cotonou in Benin, West Africa, and she says that consistent exposure to the sun creates an accumulated risk.
The accumulation of these damages leads to a modification of the skin cells, which progressively become cancerous and thus results in a process that eventually causes skin cancer.
The rise in temperatures is having effects across the world, including South Korea, where the Meteorological Service is recording 2023 as the hottest year since 1973. The increase in temperatures is changing the kind of crops that South Korea farmers are growing now, with farmer Myung-Sun switching part of his pear farm to a much more tropical fruit, bananas.
At first, I was curious about whether it would really bear bananas, so it was really nice to see the fruits on the tree after we grew them.
Kim Kwang-soo is a professor of agriculture and life sciences at Seoul's National University, and he says it's important that Korea's farmers are prepared to adapt to new opportunities as these temperatures rise.
Since climate change is coming, we should develop varieties of crops that fit well with these environments with new temperatures. It's very important to predict when new crops should be made and when they can be grown. It can be an important way to overcome the climate crisis.
A recent study from the Imperial College of London suggests that even though the early bird might get the worm, it's actually the night owls who are smarter. The study, which tracked 26,000 people who were part of the UK's Biobank study, looked at data including intelligence, reaction and memory tests. What the data showed was that those who stayed up late had superior cognitive function, but also that sleep duration played a role. Those that got 7 to 9 hours sleep a night scored ahead of those getting fewer hours on the pillow. Dr. Azizi Seixas is the Associate Director at the Centre for Translational Sleep and Circadian Sciences at the University of Miami, and he spoke to PBS about the findings of the study.
They found that individuals who said that they were intermediate in between morning and evening, and those individuals who were night owls, they had better cognition in this study. And this is a very large study, and it really provides a unique, interesting opportunity for us to understand the timing of sleep and the type of sleeper you are when you most optimally will do better in your day. Previously, we've always known that morningness is oftentimes equal to better performance. And what this study shows is that those individuals who are night owls actually got better cognition, and that's where it is very unique and it's very different.
As AI and robotics continue to develop at speed, we've met a number of new robots across the last few weeks on the Sunday 7. We've had a robot guide dog and a robot who specialises in picking up cigarette butts from Italian beaches. Well, this week we're on the farm with another autonomous worker, a robot called Claws. You might think that's not the friendliest name for a robot, but it stands for Concentrated Light Autonomous Weeding and Scouting, which is pretty much a description of what it does. I can't believe they didn't go for Friendly Automated Routing Machine, but ladies and gentlemen, here we are, we move. The robot was designed by a company called Earth Rover, and it uses a patented light technology to eliminate weeds without damaging the surrounding soil. CEO of the agriculture tech startup is James Miller.
Nobody really wants to go through a field weeding on a really wet, windy, cold day, so why not give it to a robot? So the best way of describing it is a schoolboy with a magnifying glass. So it concentrates the light onto a small focal point on the meristem, the growing point of the weed, and delivers a small pulse of energy, which is enough to kill the weed. It takes an individual photograph and assesses the crop beneath it, identifies the crop, protects that, and then identifies the weeds around it and says, they're enemy, I'm targeting those. And that all happens in a split second and starts shooting at the weeds.
This has been the Sunday 7. Wherever you're listening, do us a favour and hit the follow button. We'll be back tomorrow at 7 a.m. with the regular Smart 7. Have a great rest of your weekend.
Written, produced and published by Daft Doris.
The new Boost Mobile network is offering unlimited talk, text, and data for just $25 a month for life.
That sounds like a threat.
Then how do you think we should say it?
Unlimited talk, text, and data for just $25 a month for the rest of your life?
I don't know.
Until your ultimate demise.
What if we just say forever?
Okay.
$25 a month, forever.
Get unlimited talk, text, and data for just $25 a month with Boost Mobile forever.
After 30 gigabytes, customers may experience slower speeds. Customers will pay $25 a month as long as they remain active on the Boost Unlimited plan.